The plane wheels hit the tarmac in Addis Ababa. I was here, Ethiopia. The air was thin, crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. With $50 in my pocket, my challenge was to survive and thrive in this ancient land. This wasn't about five-star hotels, it was about real adventure and connecting with the land and its people. Stepping out of Bole International Airport, the city hit me like a wave. The energy was electric, with blue and white taxis buzzing around. People were everywhere, a vibrant river of motion and sound. No guides, no pre-booked tours. Just me, my wits, and a very tight budget. I spotted the local minibuses, the iconic blue and white vans that are the lifeblood of the city's transport. This was my ride. I squeezed in, my pack on my lap, surrounded by the chatter of Amharic. I was already immersed, a world away from the sterile environment of the airport. I was here to prove that adventure isn't about how much money you have, but how much courage you have to step into the unknown. My first mission in Addis Ababa was clear coffee. Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, and here it's not just a drink. It's a ceremony, a ritual, a way of life. I found a small local cafe, little more than a room with a few stools. A woman sat on a low seat, surrounded by the tools of her trade. This wasn't a quick caffeine fix. This was a cultural immersion. The ceremony began with the woman washing the green coffee beans. She roasted them over a small charcoal stove, the smell deepening into a nutty, smoky perfume. The crackling sound of the beans was like a tiny, rhythmic drumbeat. Once roasted, she brought the smoking pan around to each person in the room. We were invited to waft the fragrant smoke towards us, a sign of hospitality. She ground the beans by hand, then brewed them in a traditional clay pot called ajabina. Finally, the coffee was ready. She poured it into small, handleless cups. The first cup, called a bowl, was strong and bold. We sat in silence, just sipping and appreciating. For just a few birr, I had received more than a drink. I had been welcomed into a community and shared in a sacred tradition. This is the real currency of travel. It teaches you patience and respect for tradition. The experience was rich, not in cost, but in cultural depth. With the taste of coffee still on my tongue, I headed for the heart of Addis Ababa, the Mercato. It's one of the largest open-air markets in Africa, a sprawling labyrinth of stalls, people, and commerce. Getting there was an adventure in itself, another minibus ride, another sensory overload. The sheer scale of it was mind-boggling, a chaotic but somehow organized world of its own. Navigating the Mercato is a survival skill. You have to keep your wits about you. The air was thick with 1,000 different smells, pungent spices, roasting corn, fresh leather. I moved through narrow alleyways, each one dedicated to a different trade. I was on a mission for food. My budget was tight, so I needed to eat like a local. I found a stall where a woman was making a shiro, a delicious stew served with injera. The flavors were incredible, rich, spicy, and deeply satisfying. It cost me almost nothing, but it filled me up and gave me the energy to keep exploring. The Mercato was more than just a market. It was a raw, unfiltered look into the soul of Addis Ababa. I had spent only a tiny fraction of my $50, but I had experienced a world of sights, sounds, and flavors. This was the real deal. In a city as big as Addis Ababa, it's the people who make the experience. As I explored, I found that a smile and a simple greeting, salam, opened doors. People were curious, wanting to know where I was from, what I thought of their country. They weren't looking for money, they were looking for connection. The warmth and friendliness of the Ethiopian people were a constant, comforting presence. I remember stopping to ask for directions to the Holy Trinity Cathedral. A young man insisted on walking with me for several blocks to make sure I didn't get lost. We talked about football, life in Addis, and my adventure. This simple act of kindness was a powerful reminder that human connection is universal. Later, I found myself watching kids playing football in a dusty field. They saw me watching and waved me over. Before I knew it, I was part of the game. We couldn't speak the same language, but we communicated through the universal language of sport. These encounters cost nothing. They weren't part of any tour package. They were spontaneous, genuine moments of human interaction. I learned more about Ethiopian culture in these brief encounters than from any guidebook. Their generosity and warmth were the greatest treasures I found in Addis Ababa. This is the true wealth of a nation. Addis Ababa was incredible, but I craved the wilderness. I needed to see the legendary Ethiopian highlands. I used a small portion of my budget to buy a bus ticket for a town north of the capital. The bus station was organized chaos, a symphony of shouting conductors and revving engines. The city was about to give way to some of the most dramatic landscapes on Earth. The bus rumbled out of the city, leaving the concrete and crowds behind. The scenery began to change almost immediately, with rolling hills growing into towering mountains. This is the roof of Africa. The scale of it was breathtaking. We climbed higher and higher, the bus groaning as it navigated sharp hairpin turns. I looked out the window at sheer cliffs dropping thousands of feet into deep gorges. The journey was long, but it was anything but boring. The bus was a microcosm of Ethiopian life, packed with people from all walks of life. As we traveled deeper into the highlands, I felt a profound sense of awe. This journey was about more than just getting from one place to another. It was a journey back in time. The bus dropped me off in a small town nestled high in the Simeon Mountains. From here I began to walk, aiming to reach a small remote village I had heard about. The landscape was stunning, with giant lobelia plants and Galata baboons foraging peacefully. After a few hours of trekking, I saw it, a collection of traditional round huts called tukuls. As I approached, children ran out to greet me, their faces full of curiosity and excitement. An elder, a man with a kind, weathered face, came out to meet me. Through gestures and smiles, he understood I was a traveler seeking rest. He invited me into his family's tukul, where we shared a meal of injera and vegetable stew. They offered me tella, a traditional homemade beer. This is the essence of Ethiopian hospitality. I spent the night in the village, sleeping on a simple mat in a guest hut. The silence of the mountains was absolute, broken only by the chirping of insects. This experience cost me nothing in terms of my budget, but its value was immeasurable. My journey through the highlands coincided with Timkat, the Ethiopian Orthodox celebration of Epiphany. It is one of the most important and colorful festivals in the country. The energy was palpable even before the main event, with streets being decorated and people dressed in their finest traditional garments. The main ceremony began in the afternoon, with priests leading a procession carrying the tablet. The entire town followed, chanting, singing, and clapping. The sound of drums and sistrums filled the air. The procession made its way to a nearby stream that had been blessed for the occasion. At dawn, the climax of the festival arrived, with the high priest spraying holy water over the crowd. People cheered and rushed forward, eager to be baptized by the holy water. The atmosphere was one of huge celebration, a massive community party. I was welcomed into the festivities, offered food, and greeted with smiles. Being part of Timkat was an unforgettable experience. It was a window into the deep faith that underpins so much of Ethiopian culture. Throughout this entire journey, that $50 bill was my lifeline. It forced me to be smart, to be resourceful, and to live like a local. My biggest expense was transport, but even that was incredibly cheap. The long-distance bus journey to the highlands cost me around 200 birr, about $4. The minibuses in Addis Ababa were even cheaper, usually costing less than 10 birr per trip. By avoiding private taxis and tourist buses, I saved a huge amount of money and had a much more authentic experience. Food was another area where my budget went a long way. I ate at small local eateries and from street stalls, not in fancy restaurants. A huge plate of injera with various stews often cost less than 100 birr, or $2. Accommodation was my next challenge. In Addis Ababa, I found a simple, family-run guest house for about 300 birr a night. In the highlands, the hospitality of the village family meant I had a place to stay for free. My $50, about 2,500 Ethiopian birr, was more than enough for over a week of travel. The most valuable experiences, however, had no price tag. My time in Ethiopia was coming to an end. My $50 had provided me with one of the richest adventures of my life. This journey was about proving that real adventure is accessible to everyone. Ethiopia rewards this kind of travel with open arms and unforgettable experiences. The spirit of the Ethiopian people is what I will remember most. Their warmth, dignity, and generosity are incredible. This country gets under your skin and leaves a permanent mark on your soul.